Have you ever caught yourself looking at someone younger, making money, investing, talking about wealth, and felt that silent tightness in your chest as if you arrived too late to the game? As if, at some point in life, everyone else received a map, and you didn't. This feeling isn't usually spoken aloud, but it appears in the mirror, in comparisons, on nights when you think, if only I had started sooner. Have you ever experienced this? There's a very specific frustration in those who didn't prosper in their 20s. It's not just about money. It's about time. It's about the guilt of feeling like you wasted opportunities, believing you made the wrong decisions, carrying the impression that you're now always playing catch-up. While others seem to have moved forward, you feel stuck in the same place, even though you worked hard, made an effort, and survived. And the heaviest part of all this is that almost no one talks about this pain. It remains hidden, silent, like a constant discomfort. Perhaps you've heard, directly or indirectly, that wealth is for those who start young. That those who didn't build their assets early missed the boat. That the game is over. And little by little, this idea takes root, making you doubt your own abilities, your own financial intelligence, your own story. But let me ask you something important. What if the problem was never your age, but rather the wrong game you were taught to play? What you're about to discover might surprise you. In the world of personal finance, especially when it comes to building wealth, there's a very dangerous narrative that speed matters more than preparation, that making money early is synonymous with success. But this narrative ignores something fundamental: emotional maturity, risk awareness, and a long-term vision. It ignores the fact that many people who succeeded early went broke later, and many people who seemed behind were simply being shaped by life. If you feel like you're too late, know that this feeling is more common than it seems. It stems from constant comparison, the exaggerated emphasis on stories of early success, and a lack of honest conversations about the real path to wealth building. Stick with me until the end, because understanding this completely changes how you see yourself in this game. Maybe you're not behind. Maybe you just matured before entering the right game. Maybe everything you've experienced, the mistakes, the losses, the detours, the time that seemed unproductive, has served to build something that almost no one has when they're young: emotional control, resilience, clarity. And that, in the real game of money, is worth more than years on the calendar. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's a very specific reason why some doors in the financial world don't open early on. And when they do, it's not for just anyone. What if everything you're feeling right now wasn't a burden to hide, but a story that deserves to be heard? Because when we talk about this silent pain, this feeling of arriving late, of missing the boat, of always being one step behind, something curious happens. Other people recognize themselves. They realize they're not alone, that this guilt, this constant comparison, this discomfort with their own past isn't an individual failure, but an experience shared by many people who will still build something great. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below, describing what has touched you the most so far. It could be a phrase, a memory, a feeling. Sometimes just writing it down is a relief. And when you comment, it's not just about you. It's about allowing someone else to read and think, I feel exactly the same way. That's how a real conversation begins. And if at any point you thought this needed to be said, click like. It seems simple, but this gesture shows that this type of content needs to continue to exist, needs to reach more people who still believe they are too late to start. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and carry this message forward beyond those who have already arrived here by chance. Subscribing to the channel is also a silent way of saying, I want to learn how to play this game the right way. Because this space is being built precisely for those who are tired of empty shortcuts, quick promises, and unfair comparisons. Here, the conversation is deeper, more honest, more connected to the reality of those who have lived, made mistakes, learned, and are still standing. And now that we've created this space of trust, it's worth moving forward. Because understanding this pain is only the beginning. There's something much bigger behind it. Something that explains why some people can only build wealth when they're ready to walk through a door that few even realize exists. There's a very well-told lie that spans generations, social media feeds, and bar conversations. The idea that those who didn't get rich early failed. It seems logical at first glance, almost mathematical. The sooner you start, the more time your money has to grow. But this logic ignores something essential, something that almost never appears behind the scenes of this narrative: the human factor. Emotions, impulses, insecurity, ego. And that's exactly where the story changes. When someone prospers very young, it is rarely accompanied by proportional emotional maturity. Not because the person is incapable, but because certain layers of mindset are only built over time, with mistakes, losses, and difficult decisions. Money in the wrong hands doesn't build wealth, it builds illusions. Impulsive spending, poorly understood investments, overconfidence, fear of losing status, all of this exacts a high price. And this price usually appears later, in cycles of decline that almost no one likes to expose. The hidden truth is that time without preparation doesn't multiply wealth, it erodes it. What seems like an advantage at the young beginning often becomes a structural weakness later on. Just observe real-life cycles. People who gained very early and lost quickly. Stories of high salaries that didn't translate into wealth. Trajectories marked by hasty decisions made to prove something to someone. The impact of this isn't just financial, it's psychological. Rebuilding afterward is always more difficult than building consciously. This is where a point comes in that completely changes how we view this journey. Maturity. So, underestimated in the discourse of early enrichment, acts as a powerful filter. It reduces costly mistakes, strengthens decisions, and creates discipline. It's not about knowing everything. It's about respecting processes. Those who matured before prospering generally learn to say no, to wait, to understand risk, and not to confuse movement with progress. This internal transformation is silent, but decisive. There's a simple yet profound financial logic. Money follows behavior, and behavior is shaped by experiences. When you look back and see periods that seem unproductive, you may be ignoring what was actually built there. What happened behind the scenes matters more than what happened on stage. The invisible journey, the one where you made mistakes, adjusted, observed, and persevered, is often the true foundation for building something solid afterward. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding why getting rich early can be a trap is only part of the revelation. There's a specific reason why some people can only protect and multiply their wealth after passing certain internal tests. When their mindset changes, when their decisions cease to be reactive and become strategic. And this has everything to do with preparation, timing, and a door that doesn't open for those who don't yet know how to sustain what they desire. If all of this made sense to you, leave a comment below. That makes sense to me. When the mind matures, something silent, yet powerful, begins to happen. It's not a dramatic turnaround, not a cinematic moment. It's an internal change, almost imperceptible, but one that completely alters how you see money, risk, and choices. That pain of having arrived late begins, little by little, to transform into something else, into lucidity, into calm, into advantage. Because maturity doesn't accelerate immediate results, but it reduces mistakes that cost years of rebuilding. One of the first transformations is a clear understanding of risk. Those who have already fallen, who have already lost, who have already been deceived, begin to see beyond the easy promise. The fleeting glamour no longer seduces in the same way. There is a deeper reading of the scenario, a sharper perception of the invisible warning. This doesn't come from books alone. It comes from experience. And this clarity changes decisions. You stop acting impulsively and start acting with discernment. In the long run, this has a gigantic impact. Along with this comes emotional control. Not the cold, distant kind of control, but the kind that arises after internal storms. Those who have matured financially tend to react less and observe more. They don't panic during downturns, nor do they get overly excited during upturns. This emotional stability is an underestimated but crucial asset. Many fortunes are lost not due to a lack of money, but due to excessive emotion. And those who have felt the weight of the consequences learn, even painfully, to protect themselves from themselves. The long-term vision also broadens. When you're young, everything seems urgent. There's haste, comparison, anxiety. Over time, the journey teaches that consistency beats intensity, that small, repeated decisions build something much bigger than grand, isolated moves. This change in mindset completely alters the relationship with time. You start playing a longer, more strategic, less noisy game. And this game favors those who know how to wait. Perhaps the most overlooked point of all is the discipline built through pain. Not that idealized, motivational discipline, but the real one, forged when there was no choice. When you had to keep going, even without applause, without immediate results, without guarantees. This discipline creates a repeated, almost automatic behavior. And that's where a truth that few people accept lies. Wealth doesn't begin with money. It begins with behavior sustained over time. Your difficult past, which today seems like a setback, may have been exactly the training you needed to sustain something greater. Every mistake, every frustration, every reconsidered decision is part of the behind-the-scenes work that doesn't appear, but sustains the stage afterward. A silent transformation is happening when mindset changes, when choices cease to be reactive and become conscious. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there is a specific point where this maturity ceases to be merely protective and becomes a multiplying force. A moment when accumulated experience begins to open doors that were previously invisible, and where few enter not by luck, but by preparation. If this resonates with you, comment below. I'm on this journey too. There's a point in the journey where everything you've experienced begins to make sense. Not as justification, but as preparation. This is where the image of the shark door comes in. It doesn't appear on popular maps. It's not announced in easy promises, nor does it open for those who are in too much of a hurry. In fact, many people spend their entire lives running without even realizing that this door exists because it doesn't attract attention. It demands something that almost no one wants to develop: inner structure. The Shark Gate represents the real game of wealth building, not the noisy game of fads, shortcuts, and unmissable opportunities, but the one that works even when no one is watching. And that's why it doesn't open early, not out of cruelty nor exclusion, but by choice. Those who arrive too early often confuse movement with progress. They want to accelerate processes, prove their worth, win quickly. But this portal doesn't respond to anxiety. It responds to the ability to sustain decisions under pressure. Withstanding pressure is the first invisible filter. Pressure of losing, of making mistakes, of seeming slow while others appear to be speeding along. Those who haven't developed this emotional resilience tend to give up early or force wrong decisions. Understanding cycles is another crucial point. Nothing grows in a straight line, and those who don't accept this enter and exit the game at the worst possible moment. Maturity teaches that bad phases are not signs of failure, but natural parts of the journey. This completely changes the impact of choices. Perhaps the most difficult test is not to be dazzled. When the money starts to appear, when the results emerge, when the ego is provoked, many lose their footing. The Shark Gate closes immediately for those who confuse validation with progress. It demands sobriety, clarity, focus, and knowing how to wait completes this set. Waiting not as passivity, but as a strategy. Knowing when to act and, especially, when not to act. This portal doesn't ask your age, doesn't demand a perfect record, doesn't compare you to anyone. It observes preparedness. It observes mindset. It observes decisions repeated over time. That's why so many people believe they arrived too late, when in reality they were just being prepared behind the scenes. There's a hidden truth here that changes everything. The real game doesn't begin when you enter. It begins when you're ready to stay. Perhaps the door never closed on you. Perhaps it just didn't open before because you weren't yet able to handle what lies on the other side. And that's not a waste of time. It's protection. Each difficult phase, each forced wait, each more conscious choice has sharpened your perception, strengthened your strategy, honed your mindset. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when that door finally starts to move, something changes in how you see yourself within the game. Pain becomes a point of reference, waiting becomes an advantage, and the journey takes on a new meaning that few can explain, but many feel. If this resonated with you, comment below. That makes sense to me. At some point in the journey, something reorganizes itself internally. Comparison loses its power, the rush diminishes, and what once seemed like a setback begins to reveal a different meaning. The true advantage of those who didn't prosper early on isn't hidden in a financial secret or a rare opportunity. It lies in how their minds have been shaped. Awareness, self-control, better decisions, and consistency don't arise from nothing. They are the fruits of a silent transformation that happens far from the spotlight. Awareness changes everything because it redefines priorities. When you understand your own limits, your triggers, and your patterns, you begin to choose more clearly. You don't play games you don't understand. You don't take risks to prove your worth. You don't let yourself be swayed by seductive narratives. This awareness reduces noise and increases focus. Self-control, in turn, sustains the plan when emotion tries to sabotage it. It's what prevents reactive decisions in moments of euphoria or fear, protecting what was built with effort. Better decisions aren't perfect decisions. They're decisions that are consistent with your reality. Those who start later tend to calibrate expectations, measure consequences, and respect processes. This reduces costly mistakes. And when mistakes happen, because they always do, the impact is smaller, the correction is faster, and the learning is incorporated. Consistency closes this cycle. Not heroic consistency, but the everyday, repeated, almost boring consistency. It's what transforms small actions into solid results over time. There's a hidden truth here that's rarely spoken. Starting late isn't a disadvantage when you start better. Those who arrive with maturity make fewer mistakes, protect more, and build with greater solidity. The journey may seem slower, but it's more stable. The impact of this appears behind the scenes. Fewer disruptions, fewer traumatic restarts, more continuity. That's how real wealth is formed, not through strokes of luck, but through sustainable choices. This change in mindset alters your relationship with time. The clock ceases to be an enemy and becomes an ally. Anxiety gives way to strategy. The feeling of "I'm late" transforms into "I'm prepared." And this shift doesn't depend on age. It depends on attitude. It's not about recovering from the past, it's about navigating the future well. When you accept this, the weight of the past diminishes, and the journey gains direction. Now I want to delve even deeper into this. Subject. Because when awareness meets method, when self-control meets structure, and when consistency meets a clear plan, the game changes completely. There comes a point when everything that has been learned begins to work together, creating a cumulative effect that few notice at first, but which becomes impossible to ignore over time. That's when building ceases to be about survival and becomes about strategy. If this perspective resonates with your story, comment below. That makes sense to me. If you've made it this far, it's because some part of this conversation resonated with you. Perhaps an idea, a phrase, or simply the feeling that this story is also yours. If this content has helped you see your own journey more clearly, subscribing to the channel is a simple way to continue this exchange. The goal here is precisely this: to talk honestly about decisions, mindset, and the real game of wealth building without empty shortcuts. If you want, leave a comment saying, "This message was for me. I read," and that also helps me understand who's on this side of the screen, going through similar transformations. And if at any point you felt that this conversation made sense, a like is just a sign that this connection happened, and that it's worth continuing to delve deeper. There's a video over here that perfectly complements this topic. Click on it and continue watching. The journey continues.